Hello and welcome everyone to the first in a series of in-person and virtual events from the Masonic Library and Museum of Pennsylvania. We are live from the Grand Banquet Hall at the Masonic Temple at 1 North Broad Street. My name is Lee Martin and I'm an associate here. While your attendees on Zoom will be unmuted, please use the in-meeting chat for any questions you have, and I'll respond to them after the presentation. Also, in addition to the 1873 photography you'll see, we'll also look at period photos showing the evolution of the interior over the years. So first and foremost, I'm going to introduce you to the star of the show, Grand Lodge's first official contracted photographer, Brother Frederick Gutekunst. He had a very lucrative career in Philadelphia, evolving his business as the technology improved. His business was already doing well when he became a Freemason in 1865 and got the contract to take the temple photography in 1871. By using dry plate photography, he didn't need to worry about creating a temporary darkroom on site or running back to the shop to develop the images before the silver nitrate dried out. With this new technique, a glass plate coated with a gelatin emulsion of silver bromide could be stored for longer periods and be developed whenever it was convenient. And here's some examples of his most famous photos. He and his staff took hundreds of pictures during the Civil War period, mostly small picture cards that soldiers could send home to loved ones in case they didn't come back. As Gutekunst's reputation grew, more recognizable historical figures got their portraits done. He wasn't as well known as Matthew Brady, who photographed 18 presidents and thousands of images from the Civil War, but Gutekunst was more commercially successful. Next, we'll look at the temple construction site. Now, on or after July 1st, 1867, when Grand Lodge took ownership of the property looked like this. Now, of course, these images depended on natural light, so we assume this was a sunny day, probably in the afternoon since the camera is pointing to the northeast here. Now, probably a very familiar image to those of you who know the history of this building, the cornerstone laying. The cornerstone laying ceremony took place on June 24th, 1868. The camera is pointing southeast here as the cornerstone was being placed in the northeast corner of the building over here. And I'll highlight this. Here's this enormous tripod and block and tackle. There was a significant Masonic parade before this event, which is why we see so many mourning coats of the attendees. Now we're going to skip ahead in the construction period to the late 1872, and the building exterior was almost done. Now, looking northeast from where City Hall is now, the roof, the front entrance, and the southeast tower are not quite finished. We can see what's left of Penn Square as they've cleared the area ahead of City Hall's construction. Next, we'll see an example of what Brother Frederick sold out of his storefront and the source of most of the older photography in the museum's collection. The stereo view. Stereo views were a popular novelty in the period as they produced a 3D effect when viewed with a stereo viewer. By moving one of the images slightly to the right or the left on the print, it forces our brains to stitch those images together when we look at them through the viewer, creating a 3D image. And this is the temple after 5.5 years of construction. Next, we'll see a couple images related to the celebratory events surrounding the building's dedication in September of 1873. So these are two stereo views. On the left, this is Friday, September 26th, 1873. Those are lodge members and officers processing into the new temple from North Broad Street. We don't have photography from Saturday the 27th because the building was open for tours for Pennsylvania Masons who lived 20 miles outside or more from Philadelphia. Also, we don't have Monday photography for the dedication of Renaissance Hall, but what we do have is this photo on the right. That's Monday, September 29th. Tuesday, September 30th. Those are Knights Templar marching north on Broad Street from South Broad to consecrate their new asylum in Gothic Hall. So this is probably taken in the 1870s from the First Baptist Church Tower, which was just catty corner from the temple there. Here we can see these glass blocks. This allowed natural light to enter the building. Down through the attic, or what we now call the 5th floor, to the top of Corinthian Hall, which is right here. Also the top of what we call the 3rd floor outside Gothic Hall. This one in the middle provided light for the center hallways. And we can't see two that are out of shot. There's another one for the front of the building and another panel on the other side of the building for Renaissance Hall. Here's the front of the building, and now we're going to go inside. This is the 1st floor hallway. Now, the photographic plates needed 2 to 3 seconds of light exposure, but not from the installed gas lamps that were installed along the walls here. They would blow out the plates with very bright light, resulting nothing but large white splotches on the print. So in this shot, the light was coming through the afternoon sun, which was streaming through the front entrance. And it goes all the way back to the point where we can see William Rush's Statue of Silence further back. We can also see the ornate parapets up here on the 2nd floor. Now, natural light came in through windows all around the building, illuminating each room differently, creating interesting challenges to the photographers. Next, I want to show you Silence in her current home, because this doesn't really do justice to her appearance here. This is what she looks like, and she's right outside Corinthian Hall on the 2nd floor. Next, we'll see the hallway as it stands today. The building interior got its ornate paintwork, redecoration, and improvements between 1889 and 1908. So there was a 16-year gap where there was nothing but minimal artwork on the walls in the building. Noted Philadelphia artist George Herzog and his team decorated this hallway in 1895 and then did more robust renovations between 1901 and 1902. The light wells were filled in around 1904 or 1905. Next, we're going to go up this hallway and make a left into the grand banquet room. In 1873, the grand banqueting hall got daylight from these northern windows here. They had walnut shutters, and those were common throughout the building. The room had 15 gas chandeliers for evening events and large wooden tables that could move. There is some simple decoration on these not quite Corinthian columns, and that's a plain wood floor. That would change between 1901 and 1902, as we'll see on this slide. This is a watercolor from 1909 depicting an event that was held in 1902. The mosaic floor was added in 1901, and the ornate grape leaf artwork on the walls and ceiling, probably a reference to all the wine that was consumed. Also, these bucolic figures relative to feasting and celebration up here on the tympana are visible here and over here very briefly. Also, the column lights were added in this period. And the room was completely finished and decorated in time for the 150th anniversary of George Washington's Masonic initiation. This image is from about 2014. The wall grapevines and the light girdling, the columns are gone, but the ceiling, the mosaic floor, and the tympana art are still there. You can see lighter paint here on the right when we were experimenting with color schemes for the big update that came into the room in 2016. So this is the room as it appears now, with the repaint, new lights, stained glass, a better sound system, drop-down view screen, and of course our giant Ben Franklin. Now the tympana art and mosaic floor are still there. While the grapevines are gone, there are visual records available in case a future Grand Master would like to see the return. Next, we'll go down the hall and to the right to the library and the reading room. So this is the library in 1873. Light is coming out of the south windows over here, but the east window shutters are closed. Again, we see these not quite Corinthian columns that we saw in the banquet hall, gas lights, wood floor, typical library and reading room furniture. We also see some of Joe Bailey's wood sculpture. Next, we'll see the room a few years later. We see more bookcases as the library grew. The east window shades are open here. We know that this is before 1898 because that's when the room started decorating. And that is Bailey's statue of Hope over here. She now stands upstairs, just down from where Silence stands now. Now we'll see the room as it appears today. Now the room officially became an exhibit hall in 1970, and the wall bookcases were repurposed for exhibit space. To accommodate the growing library, the space behind the north wall over here became 3 levels of storage, which we call the stacks. And that happened between 1904 and 1905. There's about 15 feet of space between the north wall here and the southern wall in the room next door. We're going to go there next, which was originally the eastern end of the first floor hallway, but now we call it the Ben Franklin room, which got that name in 1970. We don't have an 1873 shot of this room, probably because there was no sunlight. That was the east door, which you would expect to be open for light, but at the time, St. Joseph's College was there, and then De La Salle College was there, and then the Gas and Water Bureau and the Bulletin Building. So that was probably blocking all the natural morning light. In 1903, George Herzog's team decorated this room as a parlor with artwork here up here on the tympana. This picture is from about 1907 when John Wanamaker established the museum. He donated all this furniture, and most of it is still in use in the exhibit hall. And here's what the Ben Franklin room looks like today. In 1908, Herzog added this artwork called Tradition over the door, mostly finishing the interior decoration, which started in 1888. Just this year, when we were closed, there was some much needed plaster repair and delicate paintwork on the gold trim and the ochre panels, and also the carved ceiling plaster. Now we'll go to the only lodge room on this floor, Oriental Hall. In 1873, this photo was taken with the shutters open on the north side of the room and the east shutters closed. J. Murray Gibson won the competition to decorate the room, and his team worked almost an entire year between 1895 and 1896. Here's the same room looking west. Now, if you're a Pennsylvania Mason, you might notice something interesting about these chairs. They're not quite in the position we would expect to see them in, at least compared to today. And that's pretty much how we can date these photos to 1873, since the change had not been made yet. So this photo is about 1896 after Gibson's decoration, but it also shows the additional seating associated with Royal Arch here in the east. It was remodeled to accommodate chapter meetings in 1880. And here's how the room appears today. Now, while the windows were covered mostly to keep heat in during the winter and air conditioning during the summer, the curtains also prevent ultraviolet light from damaging the paintwork. Also, all the exterior eastern window wells were bricked up in 1897 after a fire across the street scorched the paint off the window frames. All the window hardware is still in place though. Next, we're going to go up the elevator to the 3rd floor to see Gothic Hall. Now, we don't have a picture of Gothic Hall in 1873 in its original configuration, probably because there were no windows in the room originally. This sketch actually appeared in the temple's dedication book, which was published in 1875. Now, the room was considered too small for the increasing size of Templar commanderies to do their marching drills, and the hallways on the other sides of these 3 walls were eliminated in 1880 to make more floor space, and also better ventilation was added. So now we can see the windows in the eastern and northern walls and the new vents in the ceiling. This was shot somewhere between 1880 and 1900. And here's the room as it appears today. This room also saw some important work completed this year, including plaster repair, paint, and new lighting. Now we're going to go down the staircase to the second floor and go to Ionic Hall. Now this photo of Ionic Hall was from early in 1873, showing a very bare bones room, but we can see the gas feeds ready for the chandeliers, and the light, of course, coming in very strong from the south. Later in 1873, all the furnishings are in place, the rug and the 5 gasoliers. And from the other direction, looking down at the west side. And again, we can see our chair configuration. Now, Ionic's decoration was finished in August of 1890 by George Herzog and his team. Only 3 past Grand Master portraits were ready at the time, and the other panels were painted a Pompeian red. So as a Grand Master's portrait was added, that decoration disappeared. The glass chandeliers and terry cloth are gone, but we see these hybrid collar lights around the columns, as they also appeared down in the banquet hall. Now, the image isn't dated, but it's definitely before 1931, when cracked plaster in the ceiling made an appearance. Here's the room today. The plaster repairs and a complete repaint of the room, especially the ceiling, were done by John Begatin, a member of Richard Vaux's Lodge, number 384, in 1931. Both the rug and the benches were updated again later to what we see today. Now, John Begatin had already done work in Renaissance Hall in 1927 before getting this project. Here's a close-up of his repaint of the ceiling work. Next, we'll go next door to Egyptian Hall. This 1873 image of Egyptian depends on a single window behind the master's chair in the east. We really don't have a good picture of the Eastern Egyptian from this period because of that. There is a glass lantern slide shot from the side of the room at right angles to the window, but it's in very bad shape. It was George Herzog and some of his friends in Lodge 51 that recommended decorating the temple, and the art committee approved his drawings and his estimate. Herzog's studio was made up of Philadelphia's leading decorative painters at the time. Future Grand Master William J. Kelly donated $4,200 to the art committee to cover Herzog's fees, and that translates to about $115,000 today. Kelly also dedicated the room to his best friend, Grand Treasurer Thomas H. Patton, whose bronze relief now hangs in the west wall. A slightly later image with the chairs where we expect them to be in the back. So this could be 1780s to early 1880s, and here's the room today. Since this was the first lodge room to get the fancy treatment, there was a large banquet on Saturday, January 5th, 1889. On the next Saturday, January 12th, the building was open for a well-publicized and well-attended public tour of Egyptian Hall. Period newspapers detailed a long line of visitors outside the building, going several blocks and requiring additional police to manage the crowd. Now, this great artwork was also a shrewd business move for Herzog, since his company ended up completing the majority of the work in the temple. Next, we'll see Norman Hall. This is the eastern part of Norman Hall, taken in 1873 with light from the windows on the north side of the room. It was painted in 1891 after Ionic was done. Notice the tracing on the south wall mimicking the windows on the north here. Here's Norman looking west with the north windows on the right. And here's the room today. And the artwork in this room was touched up about 10 years ago. Next, we're going to go down the hallway to the west This is the end of that hallway. It's undated. It's the second floor. It was probably taken on or after 1895 when the corridors were decorated. Note those iron railings and lamps that were very fashionable during this period. This was redecorated in 1904 and 1905, but we'll see that image in a moment. We're going to turn around and face down the hallway we just walked down, so we can see this 1873 shot. Now we're looking east down that hallway, back towards Egyptian, down there in the middle. The iron parapets or in the light wells actually came up to your waist, but they look shorter here because of the position of the camera higher from the floor. It was possible for the ambitious to jump down to the first floor about 25 feet below. And here's the hallway today. The light wells were filled in when the hallways were redecorated in 1904 and 1905. The most recent work are the ceiling fans here, which were installed back in 2016 because the air conditioning doesn't reach the hallway, and a small sound system was also installed. That's Bailey's Beauty and Wisdom near the stairs to the third floor where Gothic Hall is. Now we'll turn around again to see what the west wall looks like now. There's the famous stained glass again with Bailey's Charity and Strength and portraits of Stephen Girard and General Lafayette. The Tennessee marble replaced the iron railings, but they still exist and they're enclosed inside the marble. There are some important decorations above us in this hallway now, a couple of high coves with heavy Renaissance detailing, but I don't have any before images which would show the original ley lights. Now we're going to turn to the left and approach Renaissance. This 1873 image shows one of the original 8 marble ice water fountains that were in the building. Only 4 still exist now. These were carved by Philadelphia Steam Marble Works in West Philly, who supplied all the marble plumbing fixtures in the temple. Here's an image of the fountain today. You can see the panther's head a little more clearly coming through the acanthus leaves. There are plans to get this fountain working again and also adding back a chandelier above it. Now we'll turn into Renaissance Hall on the left. This 1873 photo faces east with sunlight from the southern windows. You'll also notice the officer chairs down the middle of the room, which tells us they're setting up for a chapter meeting of Holy Royal Arch. This was the first room in America dedicated to its governing body, the Grand Holy Royal Arch Chapter, which made this room its official home on Monday, September 29th, 1873, with a banquet, a parade, speeches, and music. The veils are enormous, locally made silks, 26 feet high, 46 feet wide, and cost $6,472.11. That translates to over $140,000 in today's money. And that's a lot more expensive than the pipe organ that was constructed for this room, which only cost $1,500 and had 665 pipes. Now, if you're in Royal Arch, you'll notice that we can't see the blue veil that's sort of above us or behind us, but we do see the black and white versions of purple, red, and white, if the images wasn't color. We also don't see Joshua yet, or St. John, or any stained glass yet. Facing west, we can see all 4 veils, and you can almost see the enormous chandelier hanging from the ceiling, which is about 50 feet above. And this picture is from a later period. In 1906, Mary Gibson won the contract to do a renovation of the room, and his team added many seals of Solomon or stars of David. Tall screens of marbled stained glass were added. Also, the painting of Joshua the high priest high up on the east wall. This corresponds to the Royal Arch legends regarding lessons learned from establishing Solomon's second temple. As you can tell, he greatly simplified the veil system. After 30 years, the original silk probably wasn't in very good shape. Now, the artwork did not meet with universal accolades, and after repairs to the ceiling became necessary in 1927, there was an opportunity. This is how the room appears today. In 1927, John Begatin and his team got the contract to fix the ceiling trouble and redecorate the room. He kept and restored most of the plasterwork, but added a lot of additional art. He and his men marbleized the columns and pilasters throughout the room, added extensive arabesque ornament and silvery metallic paint, probably aluminum. He also introduced those 4 portrait medallions in the ceiling vault. Here's a better shot. Moses and King Solomon in the north, and in the south, Hiram of Tyre and Hiram of Biff. Now we'll go across the hall to Corinthian. This is an 1873 image showing the original writing podium where members would sign in their attendance and slips under a gaslight. And there are 2 drinking fountains in the background. And if I zoom in a little, you can see the original hardware there and there. And here's how it appears today. That prominent door leads to what was originally a committee room, and then over the years, various offices. It's currently a room for groomsmen when weddings are being held in the building. Next, we'll go into Corinthian Hall before it was furnished. This is looking back toward the doors we just came in, the west end of the room. No decoration yet, bare floors, no furniture or rug or any of the 50+ gas fixtures. It's the biggest in the building. It's 105 feet long, 49 feet wide, and 52 feet high. Lights coming from the northern windows and a large lay light above. All that light actually makes this one of the better photos in the collection, showing the details of this huge cornice, the huge pediment, and these arcing symbols of vessels of corn, wine, and oil, giving us a setting sun as well over the station of the senior Grand Warden. Now, despite being labeled Corinthian, the columns aren't even Corinthian in style, even by the period's definition. A later description called it an eclectic neoclassical space with details freely adapted from Imperial Roman and Renaissance models. Now we're going to look behind us at the south wall where the junior Grand Warden would sit, same time period. Again, with this huge cornice and pediment with urns on either side of a crest that includes Masonic working tools. It's a little tough to see in this picture though. We also see the sun at high noon. Next, here's what the east part of the room looked like on opening day in September. You can see a very tall chair where the Grand Master would sit inside what is basically a very large porch with just large triangular pediment above him. We're going to zoom in there on another image from the same period. Those are affronted eagles that look like they're in attack posture, and the square and compass there in the middle. You also see the rising sun in the east above the Grand Master's station, and also these portraits of Washington and Franklin on the south wall. This room was remodeled in 1903 by Herzog's team, cooperating with the building's original architect, James Windrum, into a more fashionable and more archaeologically correct simulation of what an ancient Greek space would look like. Here's the space today. This is mostly artwork from 1903. Also a lot of configuration updates, including new painted mosaics, true-to-life Corinthian columns, screened backlit window panels on both sides, caryatids in the east with Fiat Lux above them, and Helios in his chariot in the pediment, and latticework balustrade up here with torches, or torchiers. In the west, we have Hermes here above a clock, and then a mosaic of Jason and the Argonauts, and the Golden Fleece, and one of the other Latin mottos, by faith and by trust, and a rehabbed skylight to mimic an open sky. This room is always getting retouched, and the hanging lamps were new back in 1999. Thank you very much for attending today's meeting. On these links, you want to be aware of the dedication memorial. It was published in 1875, and its historical summary is outdated. It was before past Grand Master McCalla found Liberty. He found that in 1884. Now, this brings us the presentation to a close, but now we'll get to any questions that came in over the Zoom chat. There are no questions. Okay, well, if anybody is interested, the Valley of Philadelphia in Scottish Rite also attended the celebrations when the building was open, but in 1926, they constructed their own building. And they had that building until 1983 when it was demolished. And then they came back here and met in Gothic Hall, the same room as the Templars. The Shriners were around, but Imperial Council wasn't started until 1876, and Lulu was founded in 1884. Sorry, yes, here are the links again. And if we have your email address, we can send these out as well. The organs were replaced several times over the years. Originally, the building had two pipe organs, the one in Renaissance and the one in Corinthian. Now, all the lodge rooms have electronic pipe organs. Okay, well, thanks very much for attending. Please join us again on Saturday, November 14th at 3:30. And many thanks to the people you see listed there on the presentation, without which this presentation would not have been possible. Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you and have a great day.